Welcome everyone to our August community call of 2023. I'm going to go through these slides kind of quickly. The community call is for you guys, not us. It's a way to share any updates that we otherwise wouldn't share in any other place, like the GitHub repo and everything else. Use the chat. We'll be monitoring and answering questions as they come up. If you have a question, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat. We have our whole team pretty much here to answer questions. All right, our version 0.21 release will be releasing this week or next, depending on how long it might take, but it will be released soon. First, our user-defined types are now GA'd, so you don't have to include an experimental feature flag anymore. There's some good documentation on that as well, so if you want to figure out what it does or how to use it, you could find that in the repo. So we have some updates for Bicep param files. Support for get secret is now available. We've been working on this for a little while, if you remember us first getting feedback in our May community call, but it's finally released in 0.21, so you can now use the get secret function in Bicep param files. Also for Bicep param files, we have variable syntax support, so you can assign and use variables in a similar syntax to Bicep files, so that's pretty good. Bicep param commands supported in Azure CLI. This is something that Engin has been working on for a while, so we really appreciate that. Thanks, Engin. You can finally use the build params, generate params, and decompile params in the Azure CLI. Originally, it was only supported in the Bicep CLI, and we got some feedback that people wanted some support in the Azure CLI, so we have that now. Compile time imports. This feature is only available under an experimental feature flag, so you'll have to enable the compile time imports flag first before using. With this feature, you can import user-defined types across templates using an export decorator in the universal file. Right now, this can only be used on user-defined types for now, though we're working on compile time variable imports next. There's some documentation on how the syntax works in the GitHub issue regarding compile time imports, so you can search for that and check it out if you're interested in trying to use this new feature. I know a few of you have experienced a bug in which %20 in a file path would fail a deployment and result in an error that the path couldn't be found. So we put a temporary fix to bypass this error in Bicep right now until we can fix the bigger error, since the bug seems to be further upstream in OmniSharp. So yeah, those are our updates for 0.21. Future releases, we have our MS Graph provider support coming up in the next release, so that's really exciting. Our team has been working on this for a while, and we're really, really excited about it. Nothing else has really changed except private networking for deployment scripts has been pushed out again. Sorry about that, but we want to make sure that everything is top-notch when it's released. Okay, Stephen. See, Stephen here.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I need
Okay.
to go grab my my power cord. Right back.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I was going to let's see if I can. I'm ready. Okay. Now hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Let's see. Make it a little bigger. There we go. Okay, so I've been designing the ability to publish Bicep sources along with modules so that, um, well, I can show you right now. If you have references to external modules, whoops, um, and you click on this and say go to definition or F12, then you see this nice compiled JSON, which is helpful, but not very easy. The same experience if you publish your own sources, same here. But this one down here, I have experimentally published with sources along with the module. So when you press F12 on that, you actually go to the original Bicep. And that's the experience we're trying to develop with the intention also of being able to follow links that are actually inside of that as well. There's a lot of work to be done still. Um, but that's the intended experience. So we are planning on having this be opt-in. So when you publish, you'll be able to specify some sort of flag. This is published source. And when you do that, then we actually take the sources that are being compiled. It might be JSON if you don't have access to the original Bicep, and that's published inside of ACR, you know, inside of the module manifest there. So that anybody that then accesses that, if you've opted in, will be able to F12 and see the Bicep. If the sources are not available, if they haven't been published, then F12 will still take you to JSON. So as far as schedule, I'm hoping to have some basic functionality checked in, not this version, but the next version under a feature flag. It'll be fairly simple. I've got a lot of other things to do this milestone, but I have some of that going. In order to support that, we have to make some big breaking changes in the format. So just FYI on that, the intention is that if, say, at the beginning of October with version 22, if you publish a module, then the current version of Bicep will not be able to access it. You'll get an error if you try to reference it. Version 21, the one coming out soon, should be able to be fine with 22, but it won't. It'll just ignore any new functionality. Let us know if that's not enough lead time. I'm hoping that one version beforehand will be enough. We'll, of course, make note of the breaking changes in the document. So I guess I have to look and see if there are any questions so far. Not yet. Okay, so one of the challenges that we're hitting here is what to do with deep navigation. So suppose that you have one developer that, well, actually it's column developer 2, that has created a module called module 2, and they publish that module to ACR2, and they opt in to publishing source. Then developer 1 creates another module called module 1, and he publishes that with source to ACR1. And then finally we have me referencing module 1. So definitely, if developer 1 opts in with publish source, then I definitely want to be able to F12 on module 1 and see the Bicep for it. One of the questions comes, should I also be able to see Module 2's source code? Now they've both have specified that they are opting into publishing sources. However, Developer 2 has access to ACR2. Developer 1 has access to ACR2 as well as ACR1. I only have access to ACR1, which is where Module 1 is stored. So if I were referencing Module 2 directly, well, actually, I take that back. I wouldn't even be able to reference Module 2 directly. So, but with the deep links like this, there are two options that we are considering. One would be that when Developer 1 publishes, we actually take all the sources that we can have access to, all the Bicep files we have access to, in addition to the JSON, of course, and publish them. So that would include the sources of Developer 2. And with that option, I would be able to see sources from them both. The other option is that when Developer 1 publishes, we have this quickly. So in the module cache on my machine, in the sources, there's a file that has a link of what the original file was called, where we're storing it in the zip file, as to this is temporary. That's pointing in the cache. We haven't figured out exactly what to do there yet. With the other option, I would want to, if we want to be able to traverse links through Module 1 and Module 2, then I would need to also publish the full path to Module 2. So that would mean ACR2's repo name and so forth. So that way, with this option, Developer 1 publishes, and only the sources for Module 1 are published. But it also publishes the information needed that we can find the sources to Module 2 if Developer 1, if I have access to it. But to do that, I need the link, the actual full link to the ACR2's repo name and so forth. So that's the first question. Is the easier scenario by far is simply to publish everything along with Module 1. But I'm a little concerned that that might be problematic. Do we have any comments on that? So you guys would be okay if we go ahead and choose that option, which would mean that Module 1 sources would also be published with Module 2, if they both opt in, and then developer, and then I would be able to see both of those sources. Let's see, I guess I should check comments.
Kind of
Okay.
contradictory to what the publisher intended.
Well, that's the question. Did they intend to have it be available only to those with access to their ACR, or are they okay with it propagating further? And that's why I'm a little concerned, because that might be a surprise. But
That
it's
would be a
definitely
huge surprise.
Okay. That's what I'm wondering. I have seen comments though that are saying just go ahead and publish the whole thing. How many people are concerned with that?
Maybe we could put in the chat option 1 and 2, and we could have users thumbs up the ones they want.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll look at those comments. If we go with option 2, there's also the question that if we want to be able to find the sources to ACR1, if I have access to it, then I need to know the actual URL of the repo for ACR2. Is that sensitive information that we should also not be exposing? We could add another option to have that be, whether that's allowed or not, but I'm just trying to keep this as simple as possible. Yeah, allowing another option where you specify whether it's okay to propagate your sources is definitely one of the ones we're considering. Let me put it this way. Yeah, I'll let that one go as well. Those are, let me see if I had anything else I wanted to talk about. I am assuming that we will not be publishing Bicep config file. So there will be some things that won't work when you're seeing the new source because we won't have, the full, we wouldn't necessarily be able to copy the code and compile it as it is because of things like the Bicep config that's missing. But you should be able to see what's going on at least. Okay, I think that's it for here. Does anybody else have any questions before I go on? Okay, yeah, please, I'll look at the comments here. Please continue to add them. I'll have some docs on this on GitHub. Eventually, I'll make a note to that. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Stephen. All right, our next topic is Juan and Emily. Do you want to share your screen or do you want me to share the PowerPoint?
You can share the PowerPoint for the first section.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Hope everyone can see that.
Perfect. And you can stay on here for a minute.
Oh, sorry.
So, hey, everybody. You may remember in our June community call, we ran through a new experimental feature for testing in Bicep. So we introduced 2 new keywords, test and assert. And our main goal with this experimental feature has been to help Bicep developers gain confidence in their deployments, hopefully before deploying the resources themselves, and give Bicep developers an opportunity to validate Bicep templates. We have taken the approach of trying to iterate with user feedback pretty consistently throughout the summer. We've worked on this, so we have a new version of the test framework to share with you today, and Juan is going to walk through a short tutorial of it for us. And as we go through this demo, keep in mind that everything that Juan is going to share is available to use today as an experimental feature, and we'll be running through how to turn that on since we've been getting some questions on how to actually employ these features. As we go throughout, just keep in mind for feedback that while this is how the test framework exists today, nothing is finalized. We're still in the experimental phase. So we've been trying to push towards what we've been hearing in feedback sessions of pushing testing towards client side or without a connection to Azure, as well as focusing on the unit test framework. But it's a work in progress. So please drop your comments in the chat as we go. Anything from examples of how you would use testing to direct feedback on how it looks today would be helpful. And I'll be monitoring the chat as Juan shares the live tutorial. You can go to the next slide, Stephanie, and I'll pass it off to Juan. And you're muted, Juan.
Yes, so yeah, to enable the experimental features, basically you would first of all you would have to create a bicepconfig.json file and select test framework is equal to true and assertions is equal to true inside of the experimental features enabled property, and this will enable both the test keyword and the assert keyword and the test CLI command for Bicep. So could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so let's start with writing asserts. So the idea of an assert is that you can run a conditional and basically basically assert if the conditional is true or not. So this is based on like other programming language unit test framework paradigms, and the idea here is that you can assert multiple properties on your Bicep files and have some functionality over that. So one of the features that we provide is that when you deploy a Bicep file that contains an assert, then all the asserts will be evaluated. And if one of the asserts fails, then the deployment will be stopped. So you wouldn't have to wait until all the resources are deployed to know that your deployment is not working. Next slide, please. Then we integrate this assert to a test declaration. So the idea is that you can have a different file that contains multiple test declarations with different parameters, and then you can evaluate a single file, a single Bicep file, under multiple tests. So let's say you have a Bicep file that contains 3 asserts. You can evaluate that same Bicep file with multiple parameters as many times as you want in a different file. So the way you would do that is you would run a command called bicep test and the name of the file. And the name of the file should be the test file that contains the test declarations that work under this syntax. So this syntax, it's conformed of, first of all, a test parameter, a test keyword, an identifier, the path to the file that you would want to test, and a body that contains the parameters that the file that you want to test requires to be tested. So after this, I will start sharing my screen and provide some examples of things that you can start testing right now on Bicep. So this is my example of the test.bicep file. And as you can see, I have already declared 3 tests. The first one is empty because it has no parameters. It's the development.bicep file, and the 2 following tests are one that wants to test what happens with the file when you send the correct parameters and what happens with the file when you send invalid parameters. So let's start with the development.bicep file and get into more depth on how the assertions work. So as you can see in this small diagram, the idea is the following. You have an expression, and the expression should return a Boolean. So for example, if 1 is equal to 1, then this would return true. So then our basic assert would be true. If 1 is not equal to 2, so then our basic assert would be false. So this is the main idea. And here we have like a first example of something that we can do. We can compare integers. So for example, you can assert that the integer is correct. So basically that 10 is equal to 10, and that would work. You can compare two strings. So that hello world is equal to hello world. You can even compare two arrays or compare two objects. And you can also access the levels of each nested object. So for example, in this assertion, you are accessing level 2, which is this property, and the property of level 2, which is this, right? So you want to assert that this one is correct. So then if you would come to test.bicep, you can run the command, the following command, that is bicep test, and the path to the test file. And this would evaluate all these tests before going to deployment. So you can instantly have a first impression on how your bicep files are doing. So in this case, you see that depth test passed because all the assertions passed. And then we have one of the tests that didn't pass, which is main test wrong resource name, which is this one. So we would have to go to the main.bicep file to understand what's going on here. Why our test failed, right? So as you can see, like we have a resource. So basically we're creating a resource based on a list. So we are passing a number of resources and a prefix for the naming. And we are creating the number of resources, and the prefix and the name should be the prefix with the number, right? So for example, if the prefix is resource, then our namings should be like resource 1, for example, right? Or resource 2, resource 3. And that's kind of the idea, right? So seeing that this is being created with a for loop, we would want to do some validations because there is logic creating these resources. So one validation that we can do, for example, is if a user passes a prefix that is more than 24 characters, then we would want to validate that our names are still valid, that they are under the 24 character limit that Bicep, that ARM templates allows. So in this case, I created a conditional to check if any of those names that were declared on the for loop resources had more than 24 characters. And if none of them have more than 24 characters, then the assertion will be true. So this is, I think we can start to see like the usability of this tool, because yeah, the possibilities are limitless on what you can assert with these assertions. And the final validation that I included in this example is that you would want to make sure that all the names conform to the naming constraints. So one thing I did is I just validate that the expected resource names are the same names from this list. So we're asserting that the names are correct here. And if the names are not correct, for example, if you pass a different prefix that is not a resource, then you go to false. I guess this is important because if you name a resource with a different name, like it might be a resource that that Azure has already mounted, so you wouldn't want to like create a new resource in some cases. Um, in some cases, and this is helpful to catch those situations because then you wouldn't have to like restore that resource after like having created another one. And basically it just allows users to like have more maintainability in their Bicep code. So in this case we can see that it failed because the prefix was storage and not resource. So with that assert, we are enforcing that users name their resources on a certain way. So if you have large development teams, you can make these policies and you can prevent some errors from happening. And yeah, this was the tutorial. And if you want to start using...
Sorry.
If you want to start using it, you can download the nightly version of the the Bicep CLI command, and this is the command, or you can wait for the next version of Bicep to be released, and this will be included there. So thank you so much. We would appreciate any feedback and any suggestions, comments on the feature. And if anyone wants to contribute, there are open PRs open issues and PRs in the GitHub repository. Thank you.
Thanks, Juan. Thanks, Emily. If there's any questions in chat, I think there's been some good answers here, so should be okay. I will move on. Ari, did you want to share the presentation or did you want me to share?
You can go ahead and share. Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's still awake. It's a beautiful rainy morning here in Portland. So thank you everyone for joining this call. And I'm going to be talking about the new experimental feature that I've been working on. It's called dynamic type loading for the Azure Types provider at this point. And in the future, we're going to generalize that a little more. So let's talk about the motivation for this kind of feature. At the current time, we know that the type definitions for Azure are being released statically with the compiler. And that creates a challenge. One of the challenges is, for example, let's say that you are using a particular release version of the Bicep binary, and that works. Everything compiles, it's part of your CI/CD pipeline, and now you want to leverage some new feature on an Azure resource. And let's say that that new feature is being published on a new version, a new API version of that resource provider. Today, what you can do is really leverage that, but you're going to get a compiler warning. And if you want to get type checking and all the fancy stuff that the Bicep compiler provides, you will need to upgrade your toolchain. When you do upgrade your toolchain, what you're going to end up having is a bunch of potentially other issues that you need to fix because we evolve, the Bicep compiler capabilities, linter rules, So now you're in for more work than you initially wanted just by wanting to leverage a new Azure API. And so what this feature does, it really decouples the type system from the compiler capabilities in a way that you can basically load in a way that's dynamic at runtime, regardless of your Bicep compiler release. new type definitions so that that compiler is able to leverage them and give you type checking and so on and so forth for that. So that's the motivation for the feature. Does anybody have questions about the motivation? Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I'm gonna show you guys how this works. Okay, so this here is a sample of what I was talking about. I have here a main Bicep manifest, and this main Bicep manifest is trying to deploy a managed cluster, AKS managed cluster, with a version from 2023-07-02. So this particular API version was released after our Bicep release for July. And so the compiler is complaining here. You can see that it does not have types available. So basically, it cannot give you type checking. You can still use it, but you don't get type checking. So that's the problem. Now I'm going to share with you how to enable this feature. You basically, similar to other extensibility, experimental features, you need these three properties set to true. And so here in my demo, I'm basically overriding the cache root directory so that you guys can see where those type definitions get downloaded. In my case, this directory here is on the right. So today we have this Bicep registry that is used to store module references and stuff like that. And what we're going to be doing now is we're going to publish these provider or type systems as OCI artifacts, storing them in a OCI registry like MCR, and then you can basically import those namespaces, and they will end up in your local cache, similar to how other packages work in other languages. So, okay, so now we're gonna go look at the magic, right? So we also have this import declaration statement that some of you may or may not be familiar with. Today, this import declaration statement used to have like a placeholder. It was just 100, the version here. And it really meant nothing because the types that were being loaded were the types that were bundled with that binary. So what this used to do is give you some kind of namespace scoping where you could use this AZ symbol to scope some of your resources. But now this is going to have some meaning. So there's a little bit of hackery going on in the background. I have set up, a local ACR, my own private ACR, which has a package definition for the types up to date to this version. And so I just published it as version 10 for kicks. And so let's see what the Visual Studio extension for Bicep and the compiler are going to do when I uncomment this import declaration statement. And I'll talk through what's happening in the background. So you can see here that it's showing red, and what's happening in the background is the compiler is kicking into action, and the Visual Studio Code extension is sending this file to be recompiled by the language server. The language server notices that there's this declaration here, and it will say, hey, I don't have these definitions, so I'm going to go fetch them from an OCI registry. And you can see that it did, and the cache got populated here with a version 10 folder. And this types file has the type definitions that the compiler understands. And then it recompiles the file with those type definitions, and you can see that the warning went away. So now, by merely declaring here this import statement, we effectively inform the compiler of the type system with version 2023, and we get, of course, the expected type checking, right? We can check on the properties, and it will give us, our expected experience. So that's the feature. At this point, it's still needs some refinement. We're still debating how and what the versioning is going to be and how you guys can access it and at what rate we're going to publish these packages and so on. But I just wanted to share this with you. And the next step from here is going to be generalizing this dynamic type capability to extensibility providers as well. And when that happens, you're going to be able to develop your own resource types and have a tight dev test loop. So yeah, that's my demo. Thank you so much for your time. And does anybody have any questions, comments? I'm gonna go check the chat here. Okay, so doesn't seem like there are any that I could see. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this demo, and I'll pass on the baton to Emily. Sorry, to Stephanie.
Thanks, Ari. I will reshare my screen really quickly. So our requested updates, there were a couple of them. Let me know if there's anything that I'm missing, but I don't think so because I double checked this morning. One was on the function load JSON content. Someone had asked to load contents dynamically, and if there's any plans to implement this. No, I don't think there are no plans to implement this, but this is something we can talk about within our team. Also asked if there was a current option with the current status of Bicep to have this flexibility. I don't believe so, but if Marcin and Anthony, if you guys know or have any idea, please share. But unfortunately, that's the update on that. Someone asked for an update on this issue, add configuration to use recent API versions, prefer stable versions. Yeah, it said there was a comment about it being discussed in April. We will have this in the 0.23 release, so that will be at the end of November. So look out for that. Someone asked about directly reference registry modules from Bicep files. This is something that we definitely have on our plate. We want to do this soon. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get this done by 0.22 or even 0.23, but we are hoping to get this done very soon. All right. Do you have any questions on any requested updates or any other questions at all? You can raise your hand and unmute yourself if you'd like. Let's see. Joe?
Excuse me. I was wondering if there's any update on plans to address issue number 387. That's an old one here. It's been around for years, around conditionally including or skipping properties. Because if you have a parameter into a Bicep resource that can't take a null, needs to just not be there at all. There's still not a great way to conditionally do it. You can do it with weird unions of objects that will kind of get around it sometimes, but it's a real problem. And that issue has been around for years, and there's every couple of weeks there's another comment on it saying what's going on with this.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't think we have any explicit updates on it. At one point, we were, I think, arguing about what the syntax should be for this one. I see now that it has 52 upvotes, which is a pretty significant number. So we'll take a fresh look at it. We're about to start planning for our next semester, which starts in October. So we do planning in September, and we'll put this on the short list to see if we can get it prioritized early in the semester. So thank you for the reminder.
Thanks.
Any update on deployment scripts being network scoped? Marston, do you want to talk about that one? Otherwise, it should be, it was pushed out a little bit until next month.
Yeah, we expect that to be done by end of September. We're basically running into some last minute deployment issues. They're actually unrelated to the change. But yeah, should be done by the end of September.
That's good. Any update to the VS Code deployment pane to show the subscription ID along with the name? Does anyone know that it looks like there are a lot of subs under the same name?
Is Anthony on the call right now? I think we should just
Yeah.
create. I think we'll probably just need to create a new issue for this
Yeah.
one and get it tracked. So I don't know, Taylor, if you want to create an issue for this one, otherwise we can create it ourselves.
I will jump in and take care of that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. Any other questions? What if short circuiting? Is it still in progress, on track for the semester?
We have started work on it. I may have misspoke in a previous call. I don't think we committed to getting it done this semester, but we have started it. And I think what I expect to happen is that there will be a trickle of improvements on this one as we start work on it. So we have a few things that we're optimistic about, but it's hard to know for sure until we really start digging into it fully. So progress is being made, which is a milestone in and of itself.
Plans to extend to support AWS. We have no plans for that right now. There has been talk about it, so we are considering it, but definitely not in the near future. Any other questions? You can raise your hand or unmute yourself as well. Okay, then I guess we can end this community call early for once. So that'd be really great. Thanks everyone for coming, and thank you so much for all of the comments. Everyone in chat being very active. We really appreciate that. I will see you all next month. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.